All right, so this is really all about the future of how we work and what that looks like for our personal lives, for our personal productivity, but also for our entire organizations. And it really is an automation opportunity. There's tons of things I'm reading now about how this is changing the face of labor. This is changing the way that everyone works. It's going to be a real shift in the way that we think about work, and that those administrative tasks, those repetitive tasks, those non-value add tasks for us, so especially that are back office, and sometimes client facing, but a lot of those back office kinds of things, they're just going to go away. They're just going to be completely automated. And so we want to talk about how you can go about that. This can be for your personal life and your personal productivity, as well as for your organization. And we're really going to talk about this three-part methodology that we have used. Mike and I are using it right now. Is really to map first, improve second, automate third. And we'll talk about why that is so important as we go through this. So if you're going to get this right, you have to stop automating broken processes. And I've seen that for years, even before AI came along. People would try to automate through some sort of computer system. I was a director of IT for several years for a large company. And people would always bring me these processes or this part of the business that they either wanted automated, or they wanted data around it, or they wanted some sort of report, or some sort of app or program built around it. And the process was just broken, and it's just not going to work that well if that's what you're doing. So what we're really going to talk about is how do we start first with understanding the process, mapping that process first, and then building in the AI strategy from that. Now, here's a quick assessment. I will say that when I was checking the app this morning, something around the way that it's emailing people is not quite working. I'll have it working by tonight. But this is a really good assessment. It gives you results right there on the screen. It kind of asks you some questions, thought-provoking questions in different areas of your business. And we'll be rolling this out to a lot of other people over the next couple of weeks, but you guys can go ahead and take a stab at it. This is a first introduction to this, and I hope you find it super helpful. I'll send it out in the email to everyone later on, but it really starts asking you the right questions. A lot of those questions are kind of be built into this week's webinar as well as next week's. So what do we plan to cover today? First off, we're just going to talk just broadly about this AI revolution, what's happening, and what are some of the transformations that we're seeing in businesses already. We're also going to talk about the number one mistake that AI implementations usually involve. And then we're going to talk about process mapping and fundamentals. This is something Mike and I have a ton of experience, him more than me. And we'll talk about what that looks like, how to get started, why that's so crucial as a first step for you, and then give you a little challenge at the end around this process first methodology. So just to kind of set the framework for what we're looking at, it is really just amazing how fast this is happening. I mean, it's just happening at lightning speed that AI is transforming the way business is done, and I think it's just getting started. I mean, it's just starting. A lot of small businesses, about 51% of small businesses are saying they're seeing revenue uptick when they put AI in place. Think about not missing opportunities. Think about able to go after opportunities you weren't able to before. Customer follow-ups, outreach, being able to find people and contact people and get in front of people more often. Better content, more content, whether that's a good thing on LinkedIn or not. Scott and I were just having that conversation. But I mean, a lot of small businesses are seeing it. It's enabling them to go after opportunities they haven't seen before. 150% improvement in work output. The productivity gains on an individual level are pretty significant. We're not seeing that come through at the organization level yet. And everyone knows that if time frees up on your calendar, it's real easy for a boss to give you more work. Right? Like, oh, you got some free time? Okay, now do this and this. And so we're not seeing where there's a lot of productivity gains across the organization, but people individually are saying that they are experiencing a lot of productivity gains. Efficiency, there is some reported efficiency, but what's happening is companies are able to scale faster and differently. There are several companies now that have just passed the 9-figure mark, that is over $100 million company, and they have less than 50 people on staff. That was never heard of before. One of those that's really kind of big on the scene right now. One of the AI companies, Perplexity, they just came forth this week with a $14 billion valuation for next round of fundraising and looking to go public. And they're doing it with a skeleton crew. It's just not a lot of people working there. There are other companies that have 5, 10, maybe 15 employees, and they're doing 10, 20, $30 million. What it's able to do is it's able to offload some of those lower level tasks and let all the employees focus on the high level human creativity, imagination, some of the design problems, like they're allowing their staff to do those, and they're offloading all the stuff that's repetitive or administrative. And so we're seeing this in a lot of different ways in different companies. So here's a case study. You may know Klarna. Last time you bought something online, you see that little option down there. Hey, you can make your payment in 4 easy payments over the next 4 months. This is the company that does it. They do the financing behind the scenes. They really started early on, 2021, 2022, really becoming AI first in their strategy, and are able to reduce their headcount while growing the company. The productivity they see per employee has just continued to go up. And operational excellence, I think this is when we're going to start seeing more talk around, and we're going to see more and more people understand that this is a possibility, is just better management. Because I have more insights, I can make sense of the data, the information, I can stay closer to my employees, I can get information from them faster. I think this is going to be it's going to be a real operational key for a lot of managers, middle managers, and senior managers as well, that they're just going to be able to do more with AI when it comes to insights and excellence. So saving time is a huge factor in why and how people are using AI. Sales teams are saying they're saving about 2 hours a day. If you think about the follow-ups and the signals that they get from clients or potential customers, if you think about inputting that information into CRMs, getting the information back out of a database, salespeople are just seeing tremendous gains already with this, and a lot of that's being automated even as we speak. Able to spend more time focusing on the customer. I'm sure all of us have had that situation where you say, man, if I just didn't have to do all this paperwork, I didn't have to do all this process or all this follow-up or all this whatever, then I could spend more time focusing on the customer. I could be more client-facing. I could be more involved in solving their problem if I could offload some of this other stuff. And companies are seeing that left and right. Support times, they have decreased dramatically. The level of support people are able to give, we've probably all been to a website and a little chat bot pops up, and that was kind of an early indicator of what was happening. And some of that was not really AI behind the scenes. That was just a series of data prompts. Those chat bots are getting much smarter now. The way they're able to access information, the kind of conversations you can have with those. Now voice AI is happening. Probably you've gotten the calls from companies that are using AI voice. I'm actually using one of those, playing around with it myself through 11 Labs to be able to clone my voice, to be able to do podcasts and other voiceover work that sounds just like me, and to do it faster than ever before. Companies are using that for customer support now. And then marketing automation. All of us know you've got to be in the social media game. You've got to fight for attention. You got to be out there and gain attention, because that's the way you gain trust, and that's the way that you are able to connect with the people in your audience. But it can be a real time suck sometimes. It can just eat up your time trying to create that content. And so companies that are using automation are able to do that much faster and quicker. I've already started to play around with this. I've got somebody who helps me do posting and scheduling and that sort of thing. I create up a custom GPT for her, and it just is loaded with all the information of what I want to share. She puts in a topic that I want to feature that week, and it just starts creating content left and right. So this is already happening for a lot of folks. So the question is, why are some companies growing and thriving with AI, and some others are struggling or failing or afraid? They're just maybe falling behind. The ones that are succeeding, they're coming in first and seeing this as a strategic initiative for the company. Is how do we bake AI into everything that we do? Okay, it's not just, hey, let's teach everybody how to use ChatGPT. there's actually some problems with that, and we'll probably talk about that next week. But what is it like to start thinking about, hey, how is it that this is a strategic initiative for us? How does it get baked into every part of our strategy? It just becomes another way that we do business and change in the workplace. It really starts with a process first mentality of understanding, like, we know this process, we have it streamlined as best we can. Now, how do we automate it? And that's really building that foundation before you start with the technology. The ones that are struggling are the ones that start first with technology. Hey, let's just, put it into Chat GPT. Well, like, if you write the same prompt as the other person, like, you're going to get a lot of the same answers, right? Like, so building the right prompts, but also understanding a lot of other stuff about your process is so much more important. And besides, if you start automating a broken process, you're still going to have a broken process. It's just going to happen faster, right? And so maybe there's less waste for you to get to the wrong answer, but it's still the wrong answer. It's still the wrong process. And so that's why this is key, is really having that strategic vision up front about the totality of your work, or the totality of a process, or an organization. All right, so let me pause right here. So think about your own work environment, the work that you do, whether it's, you're doing it solo, or whether you're thinking about the entire organization. What's a process that just kind of comes to mind? When you think about, like, this is a really important process for me, or for my organization, and what's the biggest challenge around that right now? And maybe a different way to think about it is, what's a time waster? You have to do it, and it has to be done, but it's not really benefiting the customer. It's not really adding value, but it still has to be done behind the scenes, back office. All right, so what are some of the common places where people are most likely to stumble when it comes to automation? Okay. If you're really going to automate a process, there's about 70% of that work to get something automated that is really revolves around these pre-automation processes that we'll call them. Some of those are just, the process is just broken. Like, there's always a place where the handoff drops off, or we get to this part of the process, and then, like, it's really well defined up till step 6, and then suddenly it's not well defined, and it just seems to always get stopped or hung up, or like it just doesn't work after a certain point. Another one is just skipping the understanding what the foundational of the problem is, or what the process is even supposed to accomplish. When Mike and I do projects like this for people, we ask them, okay, so what are you really trying to accomplish? Let's back up there and start there first. Like, what's the goal of why you even do this? And it's amazing the answers you get from people, like, well, I don't know, it's just the way we've always done it. Or, Mr. Bob back in 1952, he said, start doing it this way. And so we did, and we've just never stopped, right? So sometimes asking those foundational questions about what you're trying to accomplish and why it's even in place is very helpful. And then data. Data is huge, because, all these AI engines are running on data. Now, they can look at the data differently. They're using natural language, and sometimes they can kind of understand what you're saying to them. But then when they go to look at the data, if there's bad data, or if the data doesn't make sense, or if the data is not structured in such a way that the AI engine can understand it and can produce, consistent results, you've got a problem. The old information systems adage is still true today: garbage in, garbage out. Right now, the garbage may come at you faster than it used to because of AI, but still, it's still the case. If it's garbage in, it's garbage out, and that's a real key. So, what does this process look like? And this follows really closely to the D4 methodology that I've talked about in previous webinars with strategic planning, and the process that Mike and I use for designing programs for our clients, as well as understanding how to give them the results that they need. It really follows those 4 Ds, but I've simplified it into kind of 3 different segments that we follow when we're doing a project like this. The first one is just a map. It's just define what the scope is that we're trying to accomplish, and let's go do some discovery. Okay, let's discover what is it that's happening. Ask a bunch of questions. Let's understand current state completely. I think the mistake is if we don't understand current state completely, and we jump to solving some sort of problem that may not exist, or we may not understand the full nature of the problem. That can be a real challenge. And so what we want to do is we want to really map out and understand what that process is first. Then we go about improving the process. Okay, when you can then move into this improvement mode, you can start saying, okay, where are there steps that just take too long, or where are there steps that just don't make sense anymore? Maybe they made sense at one time, but they don't now. I've seen this many, many times. I say, no, why we do that? And somebody's like, I don't know, just a previous boss told me to. And so I just do that and then I hand it off to somebody else. Those are great opportunities just to optimize the flow of what's happening. And then the last step is really to look for those places where we can automate. So let's get a really good process. Let's tighten it up as much as we can. Now let's go back and say, okay, are there parts of this that we can automate? Are there parts of this that we can give it to the machine. We can give it to some sort of technology solution and just let it do the work for us. And so that's really what we're talking about. Okay. So process mapping. What does it look like? What is it that we want to accomplish with this? First one is you just want to reveal the inefficiencies. Like you just want to uncover what you don't know. And that's all of us, right? Like even Mike and I in the small business that we have is just, there are processes. And sometimes just we'll go back and forth like, oh, I do it this way, or I do it that way, or I usually do this. Oh, that's a good idea, right? So even in a real simple business, a small business, you just ask those questions to kind of ferret out what are those inefficiencies that are kind of lurking out there under unseen sometimes. Automation targeting, like really starting to identify what can and should be automated. Not everything should be automated, not at least at this point. The technology is not there. There are still lots of places where humans need to be involved and offer their creativity and their imagination and direct the process. There's plenty of other places that, repetitive things can just be automated and nobody has to touch it. Data foundation, I just talked about this one, not just the right data and the right information, but structured in the right way. Is it named properly? Is it labeled properly? Are all the records correct? Do I have all the records in the right place? Is it in such a place, or is it in a place where I can attach to it and I can use that information? Can I write to that information? Can I change it? All of those kinds of questions need to be asked when you're going through a project like this. And the last one, this is a big one. The other part of our business is really around teams and helping teams work better together. When you start going through a process like this, it's gonna be challenging for some folks, right? There'll be some voices, some personalities that grab onto the change and take off with it. There are gonna be others that are a little bit more hesitant, more risk averse. And so knowing how to bring the team along, how to manage change in their minds and helping them understand what's happening, we find that's a huge opportunity. And so when we do projects like this, it's really just helping the team understand what's about to change, when we're going to change it, how do we scope that change, how do we phase it in, and then really to give people the support they need and the training they need to really understand how this is going to change the way that they work. Often when they can see the whole process and they can see their part in it, and then they can see kind of how the flow goes, then it becomes much easier for people to get their heads wrapped around, oh, I see why we're doing this, or oh yeah, that does make a lot of sense. I would say also just getting people involved in that mapping process early on is a huge win, because people can have a buy-in, they can have a say, they can say, well, you forgot about my part, or hey, I don't do that, I gave that to somebody else, right? So having people's buy-in early on just creates team alignment and helps everybody understand really what's happening and what needs to change. Okay, here's some critical questions. If you start doing a mapping process and you start trying to figure out like what's going on, here's 6 great questions. These will be in your email homework that I send you. First of all, who's responsible? I've done this different times with color coding each one of these or putting different stickies of different colors or sizes, but who's responsible? And sometimes the responsible person may be the one that does it or may not be, but somebody's got to be responsible for every part of the process. It's always a watch point when you get to a certain point of the process. You say, who's responsible for this? And everybody looks at each other around the room and says, I'm not really sure I sometimes do it, he sometimes does it, she does it. Like, it needs to be somebody responsible for them. What information is needed to every stage? Is it a document? Is it a database? Is it a report? Is it whatever it is, what information is needed at that phase to be processed, to be understood, that sort of thing. How long does it take? This is kind of 2 different things, right? There's the actual amount of time that the task takes, and then there's actual duration because I'm waiting or somebody else has to approve it, or It's got to sit in this stage until it can go to the next one, and sometimes the next one's not ready. And so this is a big question often. Are there steps that are sequential versus parallel? Can two or three things be done at the same time, or do I have to wait for something else to happen? Where are delays happening? It just, like I said before, either it's broken or somebody doesn't know what they're doing or somebody doesn't know they're responsible and it kind of gets bogged down. And then what triggers this process? What even starts it in the beginning? And then on the back end of it, should it trigger something else after this? These are all really good questions to ask when you start mapping out processes for yourself. Lots of different symbols, lots of different ways you can, get a template from Miro or Microsoft Whiteboard or Visio. Like there's lots of tools out there that will have these symbols in them. But if you can learn just a few basic symbols, I think it helps. I would say you don't have to. I mean, I've done this just with pure sticky notes and maybe change the colors or draw them a little bit differently depending on what the stage is. But there are some guidelines that you can use. Probably some of you are familiar with those. Like this is the time to go back into that process toolkit and start figuring out how do we sequentially map this out, understand it, and then we can start to identify the places that need to be improved and the places that can be automated. Okay. All right. So before we get off here today, here's your first challenge. Okay. So I had you think about one particular task or one particular type of activity or process that you do on a regular basis. Now's your time to think about that. Think about something that takes you at least 15 minutes a day, and you may do it several times a week. Okay, so think about just something really small, really short, and you say, man, like every day I find myself doing this one thing. It takes me 15 or 20 minutes. There's not a ton of value add to it. I just wish, like if I had my perfect world, I had an assistant that would just do this for me. That's a perfect thing to start thinking about how you can automate. Okay, so one daily task. Take the 6 questions. I'll email those out to you. If you didn't grab a screenshot of those, I'll email them to you when we're done. Take those 6 questions and just ask yourself, okay, who's in charge of this? How does it get done? What triggers it? How long does it normally take? What information do I need? You're just going to ask yourself those 6 questions. And then bring that back to the next workshop, to workshop number 2. And we'll have one or two of you just share that. If you draw it out, that's fine. If you just want to talk about it, that's fine as well. And just come back and share with us, say, hey, when I started looking at that, here's what it made me think, or here's something I noticed right away that I hadn't noticed before. And just kind of slow yourself down, give yourself the time to go through and think about what's the process really look like for something that you could look to automate or that you could use AI to help you get better and faster at. Okay. That'll be your assignment. I'll send it out to you via email after this, and along with the link to the workshop. And that will really kind of help you start thinking this way and start to experience this for yourself, so that you can start to make these kinds of changes. Okay. And if it's something that you or your organization gets kind of bogged down with, or you're like, hey, we'd just love to have a conversation about what this looks like, we do have kind of an introductory kind of program where it's about 60 days. And we just kind of walk you through all of these steps using the D4 methodology, and can really come alongside you. And they can be as little as you want or as much as you want, but usually in about 60 days or so, we can really make a lot of headway in understanding and doing one of those processes with you. The AI piece is new for a lot of us, and Mike and I are starting to use it a lot in our business. And so if you're interested, reach out to us, because we are looking for 3 clients that we could do one of these projects completely free and get new testimonials about this particular process that we're using. And so if that's you, or if that's your organization, or if you know of somebody to be interested, we want to do 2 or 3 of these just completely free of charge using this new approach with AI. Mike and I have done tons of process improvement projects before with clients and in our previous life. But this is a brand new approach that we're offering to our clients, and it'll be rolling out later this fall. So if that's something you're interested in, then just be sure to message me.